We're going to move straight on, staying in the virtual reality world. Jesse introduced himself yesterday. He's our segment sponsor for technology, and he's going to come on and look at the impact of virtual reality and hopefully give us some insight into what's coming up. Well, he will give us some insight into what's coming up, not hopefully, and to how we can use it in our environments. Thank you.
Hey there, good morning, everybody. So we're going to talk about this today. First, I want to take a poll. Raise your hand if you believe that within the next 3 years, virtual reality will be a billion-dollar industry. I got some people yes, some people not so much. All right, well, I have to admit, I'm going to tell you right now, my name is Jesse Schell, and I am a VR-aholic. I started back in 1992 right here at Carnegie Mellon University. This is somebody using one of my worlds. This is back when men were men and women were women and virtual reality helmets could protect your head, right? We called them helmets back then. Nowadays, headsets is what we call them, but they were helmets back then. So I went from there, from doing virtual reality research here at Carnegie Mellon to Disney Imagineering, where I became the creative director of the virtual reality studio there, working on projects like Disney Quest and looking at the big question of like, hey, how can you get virtual experiences into theme parks? Then in about 2002, I came back to Carnegie Mellon and started teaching here. I started working with Randy Pausch and working with the students at the ETC, teaching the Building Virtual Worlds class. There was a year there where you can see M.K. Haley and I were teaching that together over there. So it was a rather formal event at the end of the year. And so I spent the last 14 years like working with students, basically producing about 100 virtual reality worlds a year with them. And so naturally, it was very exciting to me when this stuff started to come to market. And so my company, Schell Games, here in town, we said, boy, let's see if we can start to build some of this stuff. So we made this experience called I Expect You to Die, which is sort of a comedy spy puzzle game. And I tried to use everything I knew about my last 20 years of virtual reality and kind of guide the team to make something that would work. And of course, this new world is really different. These platforms aren't out yet, but we just put up kind of an early prototype on the Oculus Share site, which has about 3,000 virtual reality apps on it. And for the last 2 months, it's been the #1 top-rated app in the world, which is super exciting for us. But it's such a strange world where like an unfinished game prototype, we put it out there. It's up for like 3 major awards. It's like an unfinished game for platforms that aren't released yet. And we still would love to find a way that we can actually make money with this. So we've got our fingers crossed about that. So I guess my big news for you is about the year 2016. The year 2016, virtual reality is going to explode into popular culture. It is going to be an incredibly dominant thing that everyone is talking about. It's going to be coming from every conceivable direction. Is that Hillary Clinton? That's why she needed those servers. Yes. Okay. Anyway, 2016, really, it is going to be this giant, giant deal. Now, I know what a lot of people are thinking. You're thinking that, no, wait a second. We tried this back in the 90s. We totally tried this. And we tried it, and it was okay, but it kind of sucked. And I don't know why it would be any different now. And I guess I'd like to talk about a little analogy in terms of the way technology develops. Television was invented in 1884. Okay? So imagine that you're living in the period of like 1884 to say 1935. And you've got people who are like showing all these little television demos. And everybody's saying, no. I tried television back in 1905 and it sucks, right? But what it took 43 years later, this 20-year-old punk named Philo Farnsworth comes up with this way to bend electrons in an electron tube, and everything changes with television. It goes from a technology that nobody really believes is going to work into an incredibly dominant cultural force. So similarly, If you look at the history of VR, 1968, Ivan Sutherland gets the first virtual reality system working. No fancy optical tracking, not even magnetic tracking, mechanical tracking connected to your neck, right? Very early primitive system. Weirdly, exactly 43 years later, a 20-year-old punk named Palmer Luckey shows up, and he says, you know, if we did this little thing with OLEDs and we kind of did some color correction on the plastic lenses, it could change everything. And of course, now Facebook has bought his company for $2 billion. So, here's the next thing I know a lot of people are saying. Wait a second. I heard all this about 3D TV a few years ago. I heard how 3D TV was going to be the next HD and it was going to come into the home. And where is it? And isn't this just like that? And I hear people on TV all the time talking about, isn't VR just the next 3D TV? And the reason I argue that it is not is because of a fundamental misunderstanding that most people have about the nature of 3D. 3D technology is not new, right? We've had 3D technology since 1849. We've had 3D photography since 1849. Who here has taken a 3D photograph this month, right? Nobody. We don't care about 3D photography. If we really like 3D so much, all of our home videos, all of our home photography would be in 3D, but we just don't care about 3D for the sake of 3D. 3D is really only important when it serves a greater purpose. When it helps you feel like you're in a place and it makes you feel like something really cool is happening and that you're in a special location, that's when 3D really makes a difference. Otherwise, it's just kind of a novelty that's vaguely interesting. And the thing that's really hard to describe about these new VR systems is what they bring is a feeling of presence. Presence is really hard to describe if you haven't experienced it. But what's happened with these new systems is they're so high quality that your body and brain forget that it's not real. Your body and brain buy into it in a way we haven't seen before. It seems to be a combination of the high frame rate, the wide field of view, because the wide field of view allows for a thing we call lock and look. Because old VR systems with a narrow field of view, the way you'd look around is you'd turn your head. But that's not the way we work in the real world. Human beings in the real world, we see something over here, we move our eyes first, and then we turn our head. Eyes first, we lock on with our eyes, and then our head follows. You couldn't do that in old VR systems, which made them very unnatural. Newer ones have a wide enough field of view that you do have lock and look, and it feels weirdly natural. And then another important part, it's not just how things look, it's what's going on in your hands. Because the first thing that people want to do once they can look around a world is they want to put their hand out into it. And we have a special relationship between our brain and our hands, where when our brain sees our hands in the world, it takes the world very seriously and things become very real. A really common problem that we have in these virtual reality worlds is someone will be in the world for a little bit and they're kind of moving around and they're doing things and they're solving problems and they're moving pieces around or whatever. And then they have to stop and think. And they'll stop and think and there'll be maybe a virtual table right here and they'll go and they'll lean on it. And I forgot. Or the one that's really bad is they'll take the controller and they're like, let me just set this down for a minute. Oh my God, right? And then it falls on the ground, which is why we have these wrist straps now, because you need them, because people forget. And it's that feeling of presence, that feeling of being in a place, it's really, really powerful. And we're going to see that one of the big conversations of 2016 is, wow, have you tried this and have you tried that and have you tried the other? Because people are going to be surprised at how powerful an experience it is. So I know the other thing you're saying, well, I can't do these things. I tried them. I get motion sickness. The problem of motion sickness has largely been conquered. And it's been conquered in a few different ways. So the formula, pretty much, first, you got to render at 90 frames a second, which is really fast, but that's what you got to do. Secondly, we have there's this really cool trick that has to do with the way the LED things work, where they refresh really fast. And that makes your visual system much happier with this. And then the third part, and this is the part a lot of people don't like, you don't want to have virtual motion in your world. And when I say virtual motion, I mean I'm physically sitting still, but my virtual camera is moving through the world. That can still lead to sickness and still lead to nausea. But if you create experiences that are about just me moving about naturally in the world, and the motion is very limited, motion sickness is pretty much eliminated. So if you don't believe me, because you shouldn't, because like I'm a VR-aholic, I'd like you to listen to what Glenn Keane, the Disney animator, has to say about some of these new systems. Here's a demo of him using the tilt brush on the HTC Vive.
I would draw not to do a drawing, but so that I could step in and live in that world. Today, all the rules have changed. By putting tools in your hand that can create in virtual reality, I can put goggles on and I just step into the paper and now I'm drawing in it. North, south, east, west, all directions are open now. Just immersing myself in space is more like a dance. What is this amazing new world I just stepped into? When I draw in virtual reality, I draw all the characters real life size. They are that size in my imagination. The character can turn. Ariel is actually turning in space. And even if you take the goggles off, I'm still remembering she's right there. It's real. That doorway to the imagination is open a little wider. The edges of the paper are no longer there. This is not a flat drawing. This is sculptural drawing. Making art in three-dimensional space is an entirely new way of thinking for any artist. What does this mean for storytelling?
And that's the question. What does this mean for storytelling? There's a lot of powerful stuff that we're going to be able to do with this. I know that when my daughter, she's really into sketching, she's about 14 years old, she came into the office and tried out the tilt brush demo, and she just couldn't believe what she was looking at. And that night when she was going to bed, like she came out of her room and said, "I'm sorry, I cannot sleep. I just keep seeing the things I drew in my mind. It's like I close my eyes and I still see them." And then she said, "You know, is this what it was like when you first saw an Atari back in the 70s? And I said, you know, it might be. That might be what it's like. Okay, so in terms of the systems that are coming out, because a lot of stuff is coming out at once. Everyone's heard a lot of buzz about Oculus Rift. You know, that's Facebook. And so Facebook is going to be hitting the streets in sometime, between March and June, they're talking about. Valve, which is the company that runs Steam, the single biggest distributor of PC games, they've teamed up with HTC, and that's the HTC Vive that you just saw. And then Sony, who probably might be best positioned to make a big impact, they have their VR system, which is also going to be coming out about the same time. So all three of these, boom, are just going to be coming out all at around a $400 price point in mid-2016. It is definitely going to be the hot Christmas conversation of 2016. So this is kind of high-end VR. It requires a lot of computing and these complicated tracking systems. There's also going to be a lot of low-end VR. So we got the Samsung Gear. Jacob was just sort of showing how they were using that on their theme park rides. And then you got really, really low-end VR, the Google Cardboard, right? It's a little cardboard box with two plastic lenses in it. And so you're going to have these two and everything in between, because every smartphone manufacturer is like, who here is like desperately wishes they had a much better smartphone, right? Nobody. You're like, no, it's fine. I don't need to upgrade. I'm totally fine. And the smartphone people are horrified. So they're trying desperately to come up with anything to sell you a gadget or to get you to upgrade. And since all these things is really a plastic box, two plastic lenses that sticks on a smartphone, these things are going to be like between $0 and $99, and we're probably going to see about 20 different kinds of them. The difference with these is you don't get the richness of tracking. It can track orientation, but not position. So they end up being really good for films, short films, and and other things that people haven't figured out yet. Exactly how that market's going to go down is a little tough to figure out. But I guess one of the things I do want you to think about is if you've tried this and you're like, this kind of isn't so great, it's really different than doing these. These are going to be two really, really different experiences. So, okay, that's all fine. That's all the home market. What does this mean for theme parks? That is the relevant question for us. Rule number one of themed entertainment, you got to give them something they can't get at home. That is rule number one. And when everybody gets drunk on VR in 2016, because that's what's going to happen, the world's going to go nuts for it, it's going to be very tempting. There are going to be a lot of theme parks that are like, we got to get in on this, we got to do something, let's do something, right? And the thing you got to remember is you got to give them something they can't get at home. These systems at home are going to be pretty cool. What are you, if you're going to do something with these, what are you going to do that isn't just replicating what's going to be in the home? So there are some people experimenting with this. You know, the Europa Park thing is a fascinating experiment because nobody is going to have that at home, I'm pretty sure. Joe, can you pull the other video? So this is a thing called The Void. People may have seen kind of their promo video. I've just got a little clip of it here. Here's what they're thinking of doing. Okay, so they've got a really sexy demo video that has people walking around with people in groups, moving through tunnels, interacting with physical objects. They see it in the virtual world, but they touch it in the physical world. This seems like a huge opportunity for theme parks. It sounds also very technically difficult, but these guys are talking about this, and I think it's something that everyone's going to want to start thinking about. And I think there are some awesome opportunities there, but at the same time, I don't look at it and say this is a total slam dunk because there are three major issues when it comes to bringing VR to theme parks. The first one is what we call the hygiene issue. The systems that are coming off the shelf are designed to kind of be used privately at home. If you're going to take those off the shelf and bring them into the theme park environment, a lot of them are not quite ready, and you're going to have to find ways to deal with the the fragility, and you have to deal with that. But then you've got to deal with, man, this thing touches your face. It's like all up on your face and in your eyes and on your nose, and you've got to find ways to deal with the hygiene problem. So if you're going to do this seriously in a themed environment, you've got to take the hygiene problem seriously. Second problem, the throughput problem. Anyone know THRC on Haunted Mansion? I'm just curious. About 2,000 an hour? Yeah, that sounds right. What a lot of people don't realize for Haunted Mansion, the original pitch for Haunted Mansion was a walk-through attraction. They had it all designed up as a walk-through, and they started kind of running the numbers and doing some tests, and people really loved stuff, so they would stay, and they would watch, and they would hang out, and it would be a huge bottleneck, and it ruined the throughput. And they realized this will never work as a walk-through. We've got to find a way in order to get people through faster, and it was very successful. But if you're going to do a thing like The Void with a lot of walkthrough, man, what is your throughput like, and what are you going to charge, and what are the price points that people are going to accept? It's going to be a very difficult thing to figure out. And then the third issue is what I call the isolation problem. People go to theme parks to be together. People, unless you're like the nerds in this room, are not going to go alone, right? Right? Raise your hand if you've been to a theme park alone, right? That's right. We're weird here, right? That's what we're like here. Normal people don't do that, right? Normal people don't go to a theme park alone, and putting on a virtual reality helmet is an isolating experience. Now, Facebook's big bet is in the long run, it will be a very social experience. That online, there will be an incredible intimacy that will start to happen because they'll start to be able to do things like track your eyes within there, and you'll certainly be able to recognize gestures. We can already do that. We can see the tilt of your head and the movement of your hands. And that'll be great for if you want to kind of have kind of a remote virtual Skype kind of relationship with somebody else. But in a theme park, it's not at all clear what this means. And so you've got to be very careful about the isolation because that's not what people came there for. One of the things we fought tooth and nail for when we put Aladdin into the Aladdin virtual reality into Disney Quest was it was teams of 4 that would go in who could see each other, but they couldn't hear or interact. Like, we fought really hard to get microphones so everyone could continually talk to each other because they needed that social experience. So that's a thing to think about. If you're going to bring it into a park, how are you going to deal with isolation? So if you're going to consider, even though I really want you to be ready for when all the hype machine starts up in 2016 so that you can think about it rationally while everybody else is going crazy. There are going to be two ways to consider putting VR into a park. One is to take the short-term approach. We're going to take, look, this is a novelty and people are all hyped up about it, and because of that, we're going to put a short-term attraction in here. You know what you'll see at state fairs all around the country? You'll see the VR RV show up, right? And they'll be charging $10 a head to go in there for 5 minutes and try stuff out, right? And that'll be great while it's a novelty, and that'll last maybe a year and a half, and then it'll be old news. If you want to do a short-term thing, go into it knowing it's a short-term thing based on novelty. But if you want something for the long term, you can do it. You'll be able to do it using some of these new technologies, but you're going to have to think it through. You're going to have to want to make something touchable. You'll need to solve the problems, and you'll need to give them something that they can't get at home. Thanks very much. A couple questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
We've got 10 minutes.
So we've got a couple minutes. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer questions about any of that stuff. Yeah, right here. I was pointing at this guy. That's rude of me, isn't it? But still, I'll get to you, seriously. Oh, VR for pre-visualization of attractions, I think, is really powerful. I think VR for previs, I mean, Disney's been using that for years and years and years. Now, the downside for VR for previs is the isolation factor, right? Because what you really want is with the three, because I'm not going to make the decision on my own. 3 of us or 12 of us or whatever have to look and point at things and say no like this and no like that and no like the other. It's a little trickier to do that in VR. But it is really powerful because it really can give you the sense of space. But you're going to have to commit the resources to build the model, get the calibration right, be at the right height. Because man, if you're off by like eye height and things like that, like you'll make really bad decisions. I was in an experience where people were trying to figure out hotel rooms and trying to figure out, like, are hotel rooms the right size? And if you just have things off by a couple inches, all of a sudden your hotel room looks like grotesque and distorted. So I think if you're doing something kind of high budget that has to be perfect, it's a great idea, and it'll be much more affordable than it was. Yeah.
Okay, so AR versus VR,
Super good question.
Does that start to solve the isolation problem, and how far away is it?
Right, so great question. So augmented reality versus virtual reality. So virtual reality is like right upon us. It is right about to come out. Augmented reality is farther out. We've got the HoloLens kind of cranking up their hype machine, but even Microsoft's not going boom straight to consumer. They're going to kind of just do what they did with the PC. They're going to trickle it down through industry. It'll be expensive at first, and it'll gradually become cheaper and more accessible, because the technical problems you have to solve with augmented reality are kind of mind-blowing. You have all the challenges of getting VR right, as well as kind of being able to have wide-ranging tracking and certain display things, and you've got to deal with sunlight, and then exactly how am I interacting? I look at AR and I say it's not a really real head-mounted AR thing until like 2020, and even then, I don't even know if we know what it is. Now, I could be wrong about that, but I don't think I'm wrong about that. There's going to be some early stuff, but in terms of mainstream billion-dollar industry AR, I think that's a few years out. It could ultimately have a much bigger impact on kind of the themed entertainment industry, because it's all about, like, you know, adding things to something that's already there. Yeah. Way in the back. Yeah. Yeah, no, VR is way closer than AR. Like, as much as everybody wants AR and is like all hungry for it, like, it's just not ready. I mean, there are two companies, the two companies we hear the most talking about it are Microsoft and Magic Leap. Microsoft is like already said, look, we're going to do an industry first, and Magic Leap has been super quiet about what they're doing, and we're not really sure what they're doing. But it's clear that We're at the minimum 2 or 3 years out before there's even anything meaningful coming into the consumer space. And even then, it'll probably be, I'm guessing, kind of rough. Yeah?
So for use in theme parks, are you able to basically like overlay virtual reality on top of what's actually there? For example, like if you're in, I don't know, like Fantasyland or something, and you're looking at the theme park, are you able to overlay animation on top of the virtual reality to interact with characters?
Right, so that's the augmented reality, virtual reality distinction. When you do that overlay, that's the augmented reality. And it's just not ready yet. There are ways you can do it early. I mean, it's not like it can't be done at all. A portable system would be really challenged to do that. If you wanted like a mounted system where I'm basically looking at a screen through a camera and I'm blending those things, you could totally do some of that now. But it's going to be very specialized. My company has an augmented reality toy that we're working on that teaches chemistry. Kids build the molecules out of these little atoms, but then they don't know what molecule they built, so they take out their smartphone, snap a picture, and it does kind of an augmented reality overlay and says, oh, this is methane. Here are the properties of methane and all that. But it's incredibly specialized for this toy set. If you make really specialized things, it'll work. But general purpose augmented reality is going to be a little farther out. Yeah?
Are there control options, or can a person inside the dome have a similar experience as they rotate where the environment is changing?
So you're talking about like big domes, like planetarium domes, or like a dome on your head at the hairdresser?
Like 12 feet.
Right, okay, that's right, certainly. So we often call these cave experiences, computer augmented virtual environment or whatever. And we had some of these at Disney Quest, certainly. Those can be very powerful. When you're talking about pre-visualization, caves are really powerful because a group of people can go in, all look together and discuss and make decisions together. And certainly in a theme park, because you get that socialization, it's really powerful. The problem you have is a throughput problem because of the square footage. You don't just have the square footage of the 12 feet. Where are the projectors exactly? They're cool. I love them. My God, I was very excited. The first Thea Award I was ever involved with was for that Pirates of the Caribbean game at Disney Quest. I love those experiences, but so far they've proved difficult in terms of square footage. I've always said, no, just build a building that's like 14 stories high, and that takes up very little park square footage, and that never goes over very big. I don't know. Yeah?
What is the current state of the art in terms of the resolution? Because I tried some of the earlier stages, and you can still see it quite pixelated, even though it's a big screen.
There's a resolution challenge because the nature of the lenses expands the pixels in the middle. And being humans with a phobia, we like the pixels in the middle the best. So you can still see some pixelation. But man, it's getting better and better all the time. I mean, you've seen what's happening with the resolutions on smartphones, et cetera. It's really getting to the point where the pixels are harder to see, and the thing is so engaging you don't care that much. So right now, the pixelization is not, I wouldn't call it a problem. We'd all like it to be a little better, but it will just get better over the next 5-10 years, just quite naturally. I think I got time for maybe one more. Yes? Right, and it's a really good question. If I have an experience at the park, are there ways for me to take it home? One of the things that hasn't been explored very deeply yet is the notion of filmed VR. Because it's much easier to make a computer-generated environment in VR. To make filmed environment, the best success that I've seen are there are systems where you basically take somewhere between 8 and 10 GoPro cameras, put them in a weird ball on a stick, and then you hit record on them all at once. Bloop! And then you record like all this stuff, and then you have a computer kind of mash it all together and like make this spherical video that you can look at in VR. Even those are mostly not 3D yet, but they're going to be. People are going to start to see and feel the power of this. We're going to start to see that. And I do think there's a huge opportunity for as much as people like to, everyone's been selling photos on the flume forever, to be able to take images that really that when you're at home, make you feel like I'm back at the park right now. And not just I was back at the park right now, 3 years ago, you know, when my daughter was only 6 years old, and there she is running by at the park. It's going to be this whole new generation of home movies where you don't just like look at it from a distance. You actually feel like you're back in the place. It's a difficult challenge because of all the cameras, but there's going to be power in it. Okay, I think I'm out of time. So thank you very much.